margarita drinking in wherever you are, Westland Village or whatever in Los Angeles. That's how we met.
Yeah, but did that make you not like me? In that case, why are we here?
No, we're here because we're going to get over the need to be liked. Remember?
Nice segue. All right. Well, I guess we'll just begin. And everybody who does, I think most people either know you or know of you, and some people here are here because you invited them. And this is the naked community, everybody who hasn't been here before. And the naked community is all about closing the gap between who you truly are. Here's my tagline. Ready? I've done this a million times. It's about closing the gap between who you truly are and who the world taught you that you ought to be for your greatest level of health, happiness, and human potential. David, what's Dave Dow? Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. That's what I'm going to do.
I'm sorry to anyone who thought that they were going to actually see us naked by attending the webinar, because it did say get naked, Karen.
Yeah, naked.
If we were
naked, as in being vulnerable, as in Shakespeare, naked to mine enemies, not nude. Semantics. And so Grace and I have been speaking, well, we've known each other since 2016, but you know, we talk every once in a while, and we've done a couple webinars and things together, and there just seems to be this convergence of our messaging. Mine's more kind of in the health, don't give a rat's ass what anybody thinks of you kind of arena for your health and for your happiness. And Grace, and I'm paraphrasing mine, and Grace does this for women in business and women in, in their careers and their personal development. And we've found this convergence of messaging of when you close the gap, when you become who you truly are and stop paying attention to how the world tells you you ought to do it, there's something, your true self, there's something very powerful that shines through the quieting of the noise in your head from the voices who have been telling you how you ought to do it. So last week, we've been talking about doing this virtual retreat, which we'll talk about later, but I'm like, I was telling Grace about the naked community, and she's like, oh, remember, I had that huge one back in, when we were on that retreat together. And I'm like, yeah. And then she, kind of recapped, and I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. I've known you for 4 years, and I've been privy to, you had this one, you had this one, you had this one. And I'm like, actually, why don't you come on and talk to the group? Because it's so much nicer to hear, from different people, how their gaps have closed and what that's led to, and how their lives how that's improved their life, how that's improved their health, happiness, and human potential because relating to just one mug, you can often see it more clearly for yourself and listening to it from other people. So I'm just going to ask Grace a couple questions, kind of do this podcast interview style. And Grace, why don't you start out because I think when you tell people your story about why you do what you do for yourself in business, for other people, I think people will get a good sense of, because if you are in business for yourself, right there, the world tells us, go to school, get your education, start saving for retirement, put your head down and your eyes forward and work for somebody else and save money and do all that stuff so that you can retire and enjoy a little bit of that, your life when you're older. And then something inside of us, the people who kind of stop working for other people, there's this kind of inherent, that's what the world told me I ought to be doing, but that's not what I'm going to do. So what was it about, what did you see that led you to stop working for other people, start working for yourself, and how is that manifested in other areas of your life?
Oh, that's a great starting place. Well, what I saw was I was this young woman going to work as a school teacher every day and finding...
Oh, wait, hang on, Grace, sorry. Go.
What I saw was I was this young woman going to work as a school teacher every day and finding it harder and harder to get up in the morning. I seemed to need this constant outside motivation to go to work. And I noticed that my energy levels at the beginning of the day were just as bad as they were at the end of the day. And something was off. Like, I really just felt this isn't it. You know, here I am going to a job, exhausted, feeling burnt out, pretty broke, spending all my money on practitioners and health experts and Harley Street doctors to find out what was wrong with me, because we couldn't understand all these strange symptoms in the body. And what it reached by what I was doing. And what I saw was this relationship between following your passions and being inspired and feeling vital, feeling aligned and energetically alive. And so for me, the turning point came when I was en route to work one day on the London Underground, and I took what I can only describe as a mild anxiety attack. And I had to get off the train, and I made my way to the stairwell, and I sat on the stairwell watching thousands of people rushing to get on trains, to get to jobs, to get to work. And I just had that moment of, you know, when you just have that wake up call, Karen, you know, when the gap, like you describe it beautifully, the gap got closed. The moment that just struck me in that moment, there's got to be a better way to live. And I didn't know how, and I didn't know what else I could do. I didn't know where my skills lay beyond school teaching. But in that moment of closing the gap, I just felt, I'm going to find another way, you know, and so my journey then led me to uncovering, you know, a way out of 9 to 5 and a way into my own business.
How did that, all those little niggles in your health, that your body trying to tell you something's off here, what happened to them when you made your next move?
Yeah. So it was about 6 months later that, you know, I was in this vortex, if you like, of I'm getting out. I don't know how I'm getting out, but I'm getting out. There's got to be a better way. And so I came home from work one day, and I was quite surprised because I walked in and my partner was in the kitchen, and I knew by the look on his face something had dramatically changed in him. And he said to me, I don't want to live in London anymore. And I wasn't really up for leaving London. I had been on this trajectory, even though I didn't like my job, I had been on this trajectory where I was developing a community on personal development. I had friends, I had a social life. I was a city girl, if you like. I was very tied to my identity as a city girl, you know, despite not liking my work. But I knew in that moment, this is my way out. And he said to me, which, you know, would you like to go to Italy? You know, would you like to move to Italy with me whilst we figure out what's next? And for me, it was just a bit of sacrifice. At that time, it looked like a sacrifice. I need to leave London, but at least I'm getting out of my job. And we moved to Italy, where he originally comes from. But his intent was to get to Canada. After about 6 to 8 months of being in Italy, my mind was a bit slower. I was eating incredibly seasonal food. You know, his mother was cooking these gorgeous homemade seasonal dishes and sending them over to us. I was living right in front of the beach, and I had sunshine for the first time in my life. And I wasn't rushing around. I wasn't living at the speed of light. And my symptoms really did start to clear. You know, I wasn't experiencing all that exhaustion. But roll on about a year after that. And at this stage, I'm 18 months in Italy, and I'm thinking to myself, you know, I was getting restless. I want to serve. I want to help people. As much as we think we want to lie on the beach for the rest of our life, we really don't. There's an inherent piece of us that wants to give, wants to contribute. And so I could feel that stirring in me. And couple that with the fact I really was not happy being financially dependent on my man. I really struggled with that. Like, I felt this, I made up this whole story, which some of you might, and I was this little kind of do what you're told girl. That was my experience at the time. So I had this inner motivation to create something, to heal the relationship in some way as well with that. And again, that closing the gap moment came for me when I kind of pulled up my big girl boots and said, well, Grace, you know, you got to get help. If you're going to do this, you got to get clear on what you're going to help people with. I had the inkling I can help people. I want to help people. And it was now about getting on the path of what is my purpose? What are my true passions? And how do I develop a service around that yields an income? And so there was a lot of connecting with self with a capital S, Karen. You know,
Yeah.
I was very naturally disciplined towards listening to my wisdom. I was very in tune with my desires. I didn't second guess myself. And the time came for me with the right teacher in front of me. The time came for me to borrow the money to get myself started. And that's what I did. And I started as a coach without any training actually at the beginning. And very wisdom led. And I went on this journey of coaching people, and words sprang about, you know, what I could help people with, and people kept coming forward. I saw the beauty of what I now describe as spiritual marketing, borrowing that term from one of my teachers. But I saw the beauty of, it's not about having all the how-tos in place. It's about really wanting to serve and be of service. And if you're passionate about that, the people will follow. It's not that you don't do the how-tos. It's just that there's so much emphasis on that. And there's so little emphasis on this inner yearning to help others. And that's where the power is.
Yeah. And then the how-tos kind of come to you, you know?
Right.
Yeah. There's a couple things in there that were just really rich, and I wanted to share, like when you first started talking about the school teacher thing, and then later when you decided you're in Italy and you wanted to do something, every time there is a gap to close, there first becomes an awareness of it. And it reminds me of Muji. He's one of like my favorite spiritual teachers. And he talks about the three birds. We'll talk about the two of them because the third one's a little confusing. But he says most people go through the first part of their life as like a busy bird on the end of a branch, you know, building a nest, going to get food, having babies. Oh gosh, there's a storm. Got to, you know, half the nest fell down. Got to build the nest again, whatever. And so just to spend their life as this busy bird, you know, like you were when you witnessed the people getting onto the tube in London, and there's got to be a different way. When that moment comes, that there's got to be a different way. There's a splitting. You're no longer the busy bird. You still are the busy bird, but now you're the awareness. There's another bird further up the branch that's still a part of you, but it's watching your busyness for a while. You become aware, and it's going, well, this doesn't make sense what I'm doing. Now, many people spend their entire lives as a busy bird because that's the way the world told you ought to do it. But at some point, there's an awareness of the busyness, and through that awareness that's where the awareness of the gap comes. It's your true self going, I don't want to do this. This is what everybody else does. I don't want to do this. And I also heard that splitting in that awareness when you were in Italy. Now, most people, when they see, you know, we teach there's this, the same true self, that's where the inner wisdom comes from to tell you what to do. Well, sometimes that wisdom is simply, I know I need to ask for help. It doesn't necessarily mean you automatically know exactly what to do. Sometimes it just comes in the form of, I need help. And that is wisdom. You know, so I love those two things. And then you were coaching people without any training, you know, any formal training. Well, the training so many coaches get is how the world told you you ought to do it. You know, read this. I have quantum coaching questions on my shelf. Like, okay, just as soon as there's a pause in what the person's saying, I'm going to memorize this book of questions and just pull one out of there. That's the exact right one. Well, that's, you know, there's all kinds of coaching techniques and trainings and methodology, but the real training comes from your life experience. Like the closing, becoming the busy bird, and then the two, that life experience, because we all have our own splitting. We all have our own training, our own life 101 that is enough to help somebody else.
Yeah, I love how you're describing that, Karen, because I wouldn't necessarily have seen it as clearly as that, you know, at the time. But I love the way you're putting it together, because, you know, so often when we're not in alignment with something, we can intellectualize it and we can kind of make it okay. It doesn't matter, no big deal. I'm fine. It's okay. But there's that inner desire, that yearning, I think, within us, that is wisdom calling us. You know, I truly believe that, you know, we are here to experience the richness and enjoyment of this human experience. And so any desire that's stirring in us, whether it is, I don't want to be financially dependent on anyone else, so what? Or I want out of my job, or I want to serve more people. I think it's very important that we don't intellectualize those desires, because those are the pathway to closing, as you described, that gap and through that wisdom. So, you know, that was the initial part of my journey, and that was how I started closing the gap.
And it's the little things that, they're not little, actually. I mean, once you recognize, because we're told, I love what you said about the desire. Once we're told our whole lives that the desire is wrong, because the desire is not what the world said you ought to do. So we deny our desire, even though that desire, the inspired feelings. I was talking with Antra about this the other day. I think I talked about with many people about this. We're sitting at home. I'm going to say this bit, and then I want you to continue on with the story, because I think the desire part is important to flag, because we're sitting at home, locked in our homes under house arrest, right? And we're still telling ourselves to deny that desire. Oh, I should really clean, or, oh, you know, I should use this time wisely and fix the roof, or, you know, or the shed, or do more laundry, or, you know, go through my cabinets and throw things away. When your desire is saying, listen to that podcast, or watch that show, or just sit quietly for a while, or go take a walk. Well, the desire, even that little whisper, do this, you know, you don't know where that is going to lead to. That podcast might lead to a book that was mentioned, might lead to, you know, it's all, Andrea said paint rocks. Yeah. I mean, but the desire leads you, it's like a breadcrumb that leads you to this, that leads you to that, to lead you to a meeting with another person. But we deny and push that aside because we were taught to that's selfish, or that's lazy, or that's self-indulgent, when it is that thing that's pulling you toward the next thing to get you where you truly want to go. And it's so much more effortless and fun and inspired, but we tamp it down and silence it because that's not how it ought to be. We need to sacrifice. We need to do more things. But when you follow that desire, getting to where you want to go becomes so much more efficient, because there's something inside of us that's driving the ship that is standing 10,000 feet above our worlds and looking down at the tapestry and going, well, you don't have to do this. If you just go there and you'll be there, you know, this time instead of, but we take the wheel and we take the reins. We're like, no, I got to do this. I got to push through. But but paying attention to those desires and those little nigglings of inspiration and fun is so important, but we miss it. We miss it because we are told to deny it.
Yeah, and you know, I'm a bit of a language nerd, and I looked up the word desire one day. I don't know why, I just did, and I noticed it came from the Latin desidere. And desidere in the Latin form means of the Father. And I started connecting the dots that in fact, any desire we have is coming from the Father, the source, the intelligence behind life. And it is an inner yearning that is literally downloaded to you because it is the direction you're supposed to go in. And it could be as simple as you said, Karen, take a walk instead of, you know, washing the dishes. Today in my own life, you know, I kind of thought to myself a bit earlier, shall I do a dance class or shall I take a walk? And the desire in me was like, take a walk, Grace, get out into nature. So I'm walking along the path with my dog and I'm just, you know, in a bit of a free, clear mind. And the next thing, a pheasant flies past. I've seen a pheasant, I don't think, in years, but being the spiritual nerd that I am, I had to Google and look up what's the spiritual meaning of pheasant.
Oh my God, I do that too.
And I read,
it's your new totem animal.
Yeah, like what's the spiritual meaning when you see a pheasant? And it said, you know, it said, mentioned many things, but I got the message I needed, which was around a business idea that I have that I've been questioning. And so what I read in the meaning of pheasant confirmed for me the idea that I want to go in is correct. And so again, it's like listening to that stirring within us. You know, that's a simple example, but had I taken the dance class instead in my home and just done an online class, much as I would have loved it, you know, I wouldn't have had the answer to what I was searching for today. Wow. So that, you know, that it's about paying attention, isn't it? It's about, you know, paying attention. It's hard to pay attention to your desires when you're in the hustle. And as I see it, Karen, the hustle is the should that you're talking about. You should do it this way. It's got to be done that way. If it's not perfect, you shouldn't put it out there. And yet, all the while, we're living with a gun to our head, as long as we're living with that should. So it's that inner yearning, that desire, that thing from the Father that's asking me to go forth. And that's how my business started, if you don't mind me sharing that, Karen. I was sitting on the beach, I was looking over the water, and I was asking, you know, how do I get clients? How do I get started? I'd been in that question for a number of months, actually. And in a free, clear mind, my wisdom came to me: host an event. And this didn't make any sense. I remember thinking, host an event? Oh my God, I'm in Italy. I don't speak the language. People in Italy think a coach is a bus. So they're still not completely up to speed yet with what coaching is. They know what psychotherapist is. They know what, you know, psychologists are, but a coach was a bus. So I had to get a bit deeper. Like, I had to use my common sense. And I realized, go back to London, Grace, for a couple of days for this event, host this event. And I felt excited. That's the other thing about desire. I didn't feel drama with it. Even though I didn't have the money at the time, even though I didn't have a following, I felt this kind of, passion. Oh, that would be great. Oh, I'd love to do that. So what I did on my journey was I collaborated with a woman in London, and we split the costs, and I borrowed some money to go back to London. I think I had £160 in my pocket at the time. And I tried to make this offer. Like, it was so ambitious. It was something like, come and coach with me on retreat in Italy, 6 people, you know, and nobody wanted it. It landed on deaf ears. Thank God it did, because I wasn't ready for that at that stage. But what happened at that event was a woman approached me at the end and she said, Grace, I don't want to do a group thing. I'd really love to work with you one-to-one if you do that. I'm in corporate. I want out of my job. Can you help me? And instinctively, that was a gap closing for me right there, Karen. My answer was yes. And we got to do a one-day intensive together to help her define her passions and purpose in Paris. And that was the beginning of my business. That was the start of traction. You know, there was momentum was gained one client at a time.
I mean, it's so much like so many of our stories, but it's just like listening to anybody's story where they find the courage to be disliked. They find the courage to go against the grain of the world. And they really just find the courage to follow that desire. By the way, when she said the Latin word, I think I got a little turned on. I got to learn that language again, the word, how to say that again. but seriously, like just, we think it takes courage, but really it's what we're supposed to do. You know, we're just taught from the very beginning to not do that, to go against that. That's selfish, that's self-indulgent, that's whatever, but it is the father, it is, or the mother, or the source of the thing that is coming through us. Go this way, nudge this way. And the thing is, sometimes it's not always filled with passion and excitement. There's a gentle, to me, there's this gentle, springy, effervescent feeling to it. And it tells you to go in one direction, and sometimes that going in that direction isn't comfortable.
Sharing that it was listening to that wisdom about hosting an event and then following that desire to do so and feeling passionate about it. And in that event, you know, although my sales offer landed on deaf ears, you know, it didn't matter. Like, the intelligence behind life had an even better offer on offer. That was me taking control of the reins at that time. Oh, you know, I should make this offer, and it should look this way, and I should put it out this way. But life had something better, something much easier. You know, I remember I made the same amount of money in a day with this one woman that I would have had to make with 6 people across 3 days in a scenario I wasn't quite ready for. So something about just following the wisdom and the desire and then letting go control of whatever you think needs to happen next.
Right.
So life went on. I was very blessed that, you know, my business did start taking off, and I eventually invested in some very deep coaching support around marketing and, you know, the how-tos, I suppose. And I was quite blessed that, you know, I had quite rapid success. It wasn't common. Certainly wasn't the norm for someone brand new starting out. And so I find myself traveling the world, hosting clients in intensives and retreats from Beverly Hills to Saint-Tropez, New York, Rome, Sydney, everywhere. But at some point on that journey, I was back to feeling tired. And it was another gap closer, Karen. I was like, I've got all this success. I've got all this money. My brand had been endorsed by Forbes. I had a lot of credibility. I had people telling other people about me. And yet what I woke up to was, why are you not enjoying any of this? What the fuck's going on, Grace? I literally had feelings of this feels like the feeling I had in my day job. So I knew then that, again, that, you know, I'd been led by life, Karen, beautifully, but the world was wanting of me coaching that was related to how to create success in a business, which meant they were asking me, the world was asking me, show me how you did it. Yeah, but show me the formula. But yeah, but show me the advertising. Yeah, but show me how you did it. And I fell into giving people strategy and advice, which did not light me up. That wasn't where my passion was. My passion was always around helping people discover their deeper purpose and true passion so they could feel vital and alive. Because I truly believe there's a relationship between the two. And so I fell into what the world was wanting of me. And of course, everybody said, but Grace, you know, that makes you money, but don't give that up. But, you know, you've got all this traction. But again, and this happened, you'll laugh at this. This happened right in a moment when I was about to sign on a 7-figure business deal. So I'm in this hotel room in Miami, and I'm being primed for this 7-figure direction. And I was spinning on will I, won't I, should I, shouldn't I, will I, won't I. I woke up that morning and everything in my body said, no, Grace, do not sign. I love wisdom always comes to me in 3. I don't know if that happens for you lot, but I normally get 3 words: do not sign, host an event. But you know, I woke up that morning and that was it. It was like clear as day. My wisdom had spoken, and I had to be very brave and courageous and say, I'm not going to sign on that. I'm not going to go in that direction. And I retreated for about 6 months. I had to do what I was being called to do in terms of rest and relaxation and getting back to my core passions, getting back to a deeper way of serving people, which is what I wanted. I'm not saying my journey was wrong, but it was easy for me, Karen, to listen to the world. The more busy-minded I got, and the more kind of wrapped up in my success that I became, the more I just fell into, oh, I'll just do what the world keeps telling me to do. I'll just do what the world keeps asking me to do. And that's where, again, I had to close that gap around, hang on a minute, Grace, you know, that there's something off here. So do not sign was the gap closer in that story.
Yeah. Wow. That's a big one, because because the world puts so much emphasis on, you know, success and money. It's so easy. And also being consistent. You know, you were doing this one thing, you'd obtained a large measure of success. Now you were being financially rewarded for it. And you have to face everybody else around you saying, don't be so flighty.
Yeah.
You know, stick to one thing. I mean, in 2 years, I remember from doing patient advocacy and having a pretty thriving business there to getting pulled into corporate wellness and then getting training into how to educate and whatever. And then getting pulled into coaching one-to-one. So, and my family's going, well, I mean, you went to school for nursing. Why aren't you still working in a hospital, you big flake? You know, and it's just like going from this thing to this, but just responding to the pull. And I love that story that you just told, because especially when not responding to the pull is so rewarded with the trappings of the world, finance and success, and denying who you truly are and holding that gap open and holding yourself away from who you truly are because of the trappings of the world. It's such a temptation. And I love that you had the foresight and courage to not only say, do not sign, but also it's time to rest and get back to who you truly are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was you know, my colleagues were also kind of stunned, you know, what are you doing, Grace? You know, like you were saying there, you know, are you sure about this? And so, yes, there was a pressure. But you know what, experiencing was enough of an indicator for me that something was off. And I've used that, Karen, as my guide over the years. You know, what level of well-being am I feeling versus what level of stress and speed and rushing am I living in? You know, and the more I'm attuned to following my passions and showing up when there's something to show up with versus showing up because you have to, showing up because you have to be consistent. Like, I don't run my business that way at all today. I'm very much, if you don't have something that you're noticing could be helpful, or you feel inspired by, or you don't have a direction of travel, that is a call for you to be in the restfulness, because soon enough you will. And there's something about trusting yourself to hang out in that unknown, that uncertainty, and hanging out there and getting comfortable there to some degree, to let the next idea or the flash of wisdom or insight come through that then takes you to your next level. And that is very different to the way I was trained in my trainings. I was trained to keep your foot on the gas. Oh, I was also told there's something wrong with you when you don't. Innocent mistake on the psychology of the person in charge. But the mentality was hustle, 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 and don't take your foot off the gas. Because if you do, you lose. And so here I was going against the grain of everything I'd learned to take my foot off the gas, to retreat for a number of months until I find my next direction. So again, listening to that inner wisdom, listening to that, and letting yourself be in the uncertainty until the clarity is there. I was ready for something else, and what I did was I took myself off on an actual retreat, on a retreat where the person in charge or the coach in charge was, you know, exploring things about business, things about life. It was all very blasé, but I'll tell you what caught my attention. I thought to myself when I saw the marketing, how the hell is this person making any money? And he's charging that much money? His marketing's terrible. He doesn't have any structure. I am really intrigued. So the reason I went on the retreat was because I had all this training in this big business head, and here was someone that was doing the complete opposite and still charging a lot, and turns out to be very successful. So I went off on this retreat, and that was Michael Neal, for those of you that are wondering. I went off on this retreat with Michael and this group, and this was, you know, this was the change. This was the big, the gap closer of all gap closers, Karen. This was
there's a sound effect for that.
That's it. So I walk into this room. I'm in Barcelona, and I'm wearing these ridiculous high heels. I'm really uptight. The city's too loud for me. The hotel is not 5-star, it's 4-star. I'm paying all this money, and it's not what I'm expecting. So I'm going in there with an attitude and a lot of noise in my head. And anyway, in the course of like even just, I think it was a 2-day retreat, but in the course of the second day, I just really noticed I couldn't connect with anyone, and I felt uncomfortable. I was worried about how I looked to the other participants. I remember in my seat, Michael would ask me a question and I'd get it wrong, that I kept like diverting my attention away from him. And I kept comparing my bag and shoes to the other ladies' bags and shoes. And I was so caught up in myself. I mean, I had no idea that I lived my life this way. But that weekend, my mind got quiet. And many of my clients that are here today know what I mean by that. My mind just got quiet during the course of that weekend, what we were exploring. And I finally noticed that I was self-conscious. I noticed the level of tension I was holding in my body. Like I was uptight and I was trying to get it right. And I was wishing I was more perfect for everybody in the room. And it was causing this massive disconnect. Like I just was so worried about how I looked. And so in that moment when I realized, holy fuck, you're self-conscious, Grace. Karen, literally, I just went, everything fell out of me. My stomach muscles relaxed for the first time in my life. I would say I stopped holding myself so tightly. I remember like my back fell into the chair and I could feel the chair supporting me. I'm doing in a retreat with 6-inch high heels on, in a retreat scenario. And like you were saying earlier about the two birds, this bird was finally looking at this bird going, oh my God, she's self-conscious. Mm-hmm. You know, they're there. It's okay, Grace. You know, nobody actually cares what you look like except you. Mm. And my God, Karen, that was the game changer. After that, wow, life opened up. I started appearing on camera, something I'd never done in my business before. I started accepting interviews with people online like this, something that would have intimidated me in the past because I wasn't perfect enough. I totally changed my style. I stopped wearing 6-inch heels. I mean, I'm already tall, but I did that to look slimmer. I started enjoying life to the full. I remember at one point, because I had lived with so many rules about how you should look to the world, I wouldn't let myself let my hair down. So I would maybe have 2 drinks and then that would be it, because I need to be really careful and I need to go home and it's 10 o'clock. I need to get 8 hours of sleep or I'm not going to be okay. I was so wrapped in these rules that after this insight, this gap closer, I remember I went completely the other way for 6 months. I partied till 3 a.m. You remember me saying in one of our Super Coach webinars or something, oh, I think there's something wrong with me. I can't stop partying. I partied till 3 a.m. I was drinking more than I had ever drunk and there was no like hangover the next day. I was like, what the hell happened? You know, this is incredible. How come I can do this? I was just more in my Grace with a capital G. It was just magnetic. And people, the world was feeding back. Oh, Grace, you're so much more relaxed. Oh, it's so much easier to connect with you. Now, they had their own personal thinking about who Grace was. But I still took it as a sign something had shifted. And life has been very enjoyable ever since.
Yeah, and I love, because we've had some conversations recently. That's such a great story. It's such a good story, and I love how I've told them, my group recently, how life keeps giving you examples. You think you're done. You think, okay, I finally got it, and then like little things all over the place. Like mine recently was going to the Japanese restaurant with my kids and drinking water I wasn't thirsty for because I was worried about what the waiter would think about me. That you think I was wasting his time. And then what was your recent example? It was like about a party you were holding.
Oh, that's right. I was having this big 1920s party at my house. And Karen and I were on the phone together, and I was like, Karen, like, oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, I've got this cool set in Italy, and they're so stylish, and they're really rich, and they're so glamorous, and they want to hang out with me, and they want to come to my party. And Karen was like,
you said they want to take me under their wing.
Yeah, they've taken me under their wing. And Karen was like, did you just hear what you said? And I was so stressed to impress. Like, that party was a nightmare. I hated every moment of it for the most part, because I caught myself, thankfully, so stressed to impress the world that I made up about this rich set in Italy that were all like models and really important people. And I, again, thought, like, that just closed the gap. I was like, what? Karen, help me there. What the fuck are you doing, Grace?
Yeah, like they're like that. To me, it's the opposite. You know, like you did, like when people don't see your genuinity and your authenticity, and like you're ahead of the wave, but we get dragged back into thinking we're behind the wave because we're not this glamorous thing, whatever. But we're really ahead, because when you're not worrying so much about that, you're closer to who you truly are. And it's so much easier to navigate the world like that, you know? Yeah. And I just love that story. It's hilarious. Like, you know, whatever is the chink in your armor, mine is people pleasing, like with the waiter. Yours is, you know, self-consciousness. Like with life, you're never done. And you think like that's bad news. Oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do this for the rest of my life and learn all these lessons. Well, yeah, when you start to learn them and think and see that the more the gap closes, the easier and better life gets, the easier it is to navigate. You look forward to those moments where you've gotten lost again, or you get to see something new again that you thought you were done seeing.
And the old me would have beaten myself up about it, you know, but there is something so lovely about the compassion you feel towards yourself as you catch yourself in the behavior. And it was just lighthearted, wasn't it? It was just very lighthearted in realizing that. I am glad we had the party, because lockdown happened just after it. so there was some blessing to it. Yeah.
Well, Grace, what would you say? I'm gonna. Is it okay if we see if anybody has any questions for you?
Oh God, of course. Yeah.
My first one is, and after listening to your story, and I always hear something new from it. If somebody's, you know, starting on the journey or in the middle of the journey, but still wondering, how do I get in touch with that desire? Like, because if you've spent your whole life ignoring it, you know, where is it? How do I feel it? How do I know that that's what it is, you know, because it's really kind of sometimes unnerving and scary to go from doing what the world told you ought to do to following this desire. And then if I go in this direction, that's a little bit scary because it's in the opposite way that I've always done things. How do I know if that's really it? What would you say to somebody who really so desperately wants to get in touch with their desire like you did, but doesn't know if that's really it?
Well, don't make it a big deal. You know, I think we can make desire, wisdom, this big elusive thing. It's really easy. You all know that when you need to pee, you need to pee. And when you need to drink water, like you said, Karen, you need to drink water. Well, it's the same with your desire. It's not some big scary thing that you don't understand and you don't know where it is. It's more like just that common sense, I'm compelled to do this. I feel an urge towards this. Sometimes the feeling of it being scary yet exciting, oh my God, what will people think? That's a great example of, that's it. you know, that thing that scares you, that excites you. But oftentimes it is so simple. We're doing it every day. In my case today, do you want to do a dance class online, or do you want to go for a walk? Well, I felt compelled to go for a walk. It was a simple desire to go for a walk. So the key here is not to over-examine it.
The first thing that came to me, Alex, is what's wrong with being selfish? I mean, the need to justify comes from our belief that it's wrong to be selfish. So if you take that off the table, that also takes off the table the need to justify. And the reason it's not wrong to be selfish is I'll give you I talk about this metaphor often, that Anita Moorjani, who wrote the book Dying to Be Me, when she had her near-death experience, she saw that we're taught the opposite way it truly is. Not selfish as in, you know, like, you know, to the world, but actually filling yourself up first, following your desire, then you overflow onto other people. Where we're taught, sacrifice yourself, don't be selfish, put everybody else first, drain your energy. And actually, since we're all connected energetically through this web, when you drain from yourself, you drain from the whole. So if there's something within you, your wisdom is saying no to that because it wants to take care of you, you then add to the whole, and the whole starts to take care of you more. And it's like, oh, she's doing a great job taking care of herself. Let's give her more energy. Let's give her, but it's our responsibility to start being selfish. And when you see how it truly works, following your desire is not, it's actually it's the most selfless thing you can do, because you're adding, when you add to yourself, you add to the whole, and then you overflow onto. Now, the reason we feel the need to justify this to other people is because 99.9% of the world has been taught the opposite, us too. But we're starting to wake up to the truth. So there's this dance in the middle between turning in the direction of truth and away from the way the world told us how it ought to be. That's a bit, you're going against the grain, kid. You know, it's like you're doing what you know to do. And eventually the need to justify just falls away. You don't, you know, it just kind of happens, because the more you put yourself first and you follow your desire, and it might be considered selfish, but you see the result of that. Oh my gosh, then I was led there. And oh my gosh, I have more energy at the end of the day than I did at the beginning because I'm answering this desire. It won't become a question, and there won't become a need to justify anymore. But in the beginning, it's just different. What would you say, Grace?
Yeah, I mean, I really resonate with what you asked, because I did that a lot too. Always kind of giving the backstory to my no. But what I would say is the fact that you're noticing that you're doing that you're giving the backstory, the justification, well, that's where, as you would describe, Karen, the serum is in for change. Because the fact that you're noticing that, you'll stop doing it. Over time, you'll find you just stop doing it because you've woken up to, I mean, wouldn't you say, Karen, that's a bit of a gap closer? And so, you know, you're seeing what you're doing, and that it's in that seeing that you close the gap and the behavior starts to change. So me too, like, don't be worried about that. You know, one day you just stop justifying. It's just like, it's a no. It really,
and it doesn't really stop. Like, it doesn't always stop. And me too. Like, but the funny thing was, the other day, somebody said to me, I gave a no, and I started to say why, and they're like, oh, you seem to be you seem to be getting defensive. I'm like, that was always, when someone has said that, it's always like a slam or a, you know, like you're getting very defensive. And I suddenly went, yeah, well, when you're defending yourself, you're defensive. What's wrong with that? Like, why does everybody say that? Like there's something wrong with being defensive. Yeah, I'm being defensive. I'm defending myself. Duh. It's kind of like a Moto moment I had when you were talking, you know, master of the obvious.
Always.
My motto moment was, well, you still don't feel smart enough until you do. I mean, it's just like, but if you look back on the timeline, I don't know the answer to this question, but I think I do. Would you have even had that conversation with him? You know, like a year ago.
Oh,
yeah, like
hell no. I wouldn't even have engaged. I mean, originally he thought I was probably one of the most boring people he ever knew. You know, this was like 8 years ago, because I was just totally scripted around him. I only would say what I thought he wanted to hear, which was, you know, you just make small talk and you just be pleasant. So no, I never would have before.
Yeah, and that's the urgency train thing. You know, we think like once the gap closes and the rest of you're never done. So going from I wouldn't even engage in a conversation with him a year ago to yesterday, I still don't feel smart enough, but you are engaging and you are even arguing. You might have that I don't feel smart enough feeling for the rest of your life. But it's a matter of not being afraid of it and still doing it anyway, and then watch yourself grow and evolve.
So what comes into my mind is, why do you care how they interpret your experience?
Yeah.
You know,
that's
like,
the question.
Yeah. You know, everybody's having a different experience of everybody else. But the key is like, why do we care so much?
No, I love that simple question too, Grace, because to me, when you say, why do I care? It's the witnessing of the caring, you know. In one instance, you're just in it and it paralyzes you because you care so much. But when you start to see that you care and go, why do I care? That's when you start exploring, and then you see yourself caring again, and then things start to shift. Oh, and I love what Alex just wrote too. How do we not care? Well, I don't think you ever stop. You know, the reason to ask that question, how do we not care, is because you don't like caring, because it's uncomfortable to care what people think, because you want to change the experience of giving a shit what other people think of you. Well, I don't think that ever stops, because it's kind of encoded in our DNA to care what other people think of us, so we don't get kicked out of the tribe. But the feeling of, but seeing, like Sue's, like when you see that you care less. You find yourself in situations where before you gave a shit and now you don't. And then you go about your life and you get older and you still care, and then years go on and then you don't care about that anymore. But that caring, that need for approval by the tribe, it's kind of hardwired into us. But as we grow and mature and see our caring more, there becomes less of it when we see we don't have to be afraid of it.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made sense.
And Karen, that's incredible. I mean, you know, you're pointing there to what our virtual retreat is going to be about, you know, CareLESS.
Yeah.
You know, you're pointing to what we aim to explore in going deeper together. You know, this it's not about kind of suddenly you're not self-conscious and you don't care anymore. It's about really having a freedom of mind about your experience and yourself. So you're not at the mercy of other people's interpretations. So I love that, because as I understand it, Alex said, that's so cool. As I understand it, that's what we're pointing to, you know, CareLESS. There's a difference between taking care of self and taking care of self with a capital S. Yeah. And I find that it's much richer when we are taking care of self from a place of not, let me just do something to take care of myself. Like, let me do another ritual or do another activity. Like that's slightly different to this taking care of self that actually fills you up.
When I stopped parenting, I talked about this before, but when I stopped parenting like the world told me I ought to, it's all about closing the gap between who you are and who the world told you ought to be. I hated motherhood, hated doing it because I did, I did it like the world told me I ought to do. This is kind of a high level answer, but when I stopped signing them up for things that they didn't want to be in order to keep them caught up with all the other kids, and stopped joining organizations and over volunteering at the school to make the other moms feel inferior to me because, that's what everybody else was doing. And it all came in that, fuck it. I started to, I stopped doing anything that we didn't want to do, that they didn't want to do. I stopped forcing them, or that I didn't want to do, forcing myself to do. And I started to love to do these simple things. I loved being a mom. I loved being their friend, be their parent, not their friend. Well, who made that up? I'm much better mom when I'm their friend than when I'm this authoritarian figure. And I like being a mom when I'm their friend, when they can say anything to me, when they can come to me with any problem because I'm their friend. I could still throw the hammer down every once in a while. That's my right. But so that's like, when it's tiring and exhausting to be a parent when you're trying to do it like other people told you ought to, instead of what's coming through you instinctively. About why, it's not your job to create connection with your children. Mm-hmm. It's not our job to create connection with other humans. We connect with other human beings, whether they're our children or our friends or our lovers or whoever, when we connect with ourselves. It's when you leave yourself to try to connect with someone else that you break the connection.
Yeah, I mean, this retreat is it's an opportunity for us to go deeper on the subject of CareLESS. So if you are struggling with the expectations of others and you constantly find yourself exhausted or wiped out, and you are just at the mercy of other people's experience about you, or if you're like me in the past and you find yourself self-conscious, caught up about things being perfect and your image needing to be right, or...
But what she said, the whole thing is about caring less about what other people think of you and how that leads to your greatest level of health, happiness, and human potential. When you bring your energy back home to yourself, you have more energy not only for the things you want to accomplish in life, but your vitality, not only in your health, but in following your inspiration